my mindset is this is just something you have. It's not who you are. It's like any medical condition. If you can treat it and you can get a different quality of life back from it, then that is something I would want to try to have happen, and try to support. We have the ability to, potentially, save his vision and kids like him. And I want that to have it be a choice for people. That's the best part about our world and society, is that you have that choice.
Stephen Johnston, welcome to the See-Through podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you, man. You got a cool story, and I want to learn more about you, A Race Against Blindness, and your son. But, I don't want to spill all the beans here. How about I give you a chance to introduce yourself?
My name is Steve Johnston. I am a nonprofit founder. I founded a nonprofit called A Race Against Blindness. I founded it after I found out my son has the diagnosis of Bardet-Biedl Syndrome, causing retinitis pigmentosa, which is causing him to progressively lose his vision until he's expected to become legally blind by his teenage years. So that's the really quick version of me, my son, and our story.
Yeah, A Race Against Blindness. So it's a nonprofit you started. Why did you start this nonprofit? I know your son has RP.
Yeah. So as you know, retinitis pigmentosa is a very wide-ranging diagnosis. Everybody has a different progression with it, different severity, and there's numerous underlying causes of retinitis pigmentosa. And his genetic cause is Bardet-Biedl Syndrome, which is an ultra-rare condition. There's probably about 3,000 to 5,000 people in the U.S. who have his condition, and it doesn't just affect the eyes, but it does affect multiple organ systems. And all that kind of stuff. We can get into that. But yeah, Bardet-Biedl Syndrome, very rare condition.
Yeah, because I wanted to bring that up because it's a unique case of RP. I have RP myself. I've interviewed several people on my podcast who have RP. And it's the first I've heard of that. And I think the rarity of that, so RP is already a rare eye disease. I think it's estimated 1 in 4,000 people in the United States have RP, but then, what your son has, and the origins of his RP are even more rare, which I'm going to segue into A Race Against Blindness here, because the rarity of your son's condition means that the research that's going into finding a cure for his vision loss is going to be not as high of a priority as some of the more common causes of RP, which is where A Race Against Blindness comes into action, right?
Yeah, exactly. As you said it, put the nail on the head there. It's an ultra rare condition of an already rare group of diseases, which is retinitis pigmentosa. And we got the diagnosis several years ago, and we went through a process of accepting that diagnosis, learning about it, and then ultimately deciding to take action and try to support the community, raise awareness, and ultimately help drive research for his condition. And we were lucky that there is actually somebody working on it. It took us a while to find them. They're based in the United Kingdom, in the UK. And this professor, Dr. Phil Beals, has been working on Bardet-Biedl syndrome, retinitis pigmentosa for a long time, and he's developed a therapy, and we connected with him, and now we're helping support that research so that it can get to a point of being ready for a clinical trial.
Yeah, so it sounds like, since it's a rare disease, there's not much resources, and you've happened to stumble upon this doctor in the United Kingdom who is working on what you want to be worked on. Is that what separates A Race Against Blindness from, let's say, Foundation Fighting Blindness and these other organizations like RP Hope? I've talked to them. I've been advocates for them. Is Bardet-Biedl syndrome something that those organizations are not putting their attention into?
I wouldn't say that they're not putting their attention into it. I think that would be unfair to say, because those are amazing organizations. But as you know, RP encompasses so many different underlying genetic causes, and Foundation Fighting Blindness doesn't just advocate for RP, they advocate for basically all causes of vision loss, whether it's RP or something that is onset later in life with, diabetic retinopathy. They advocate for all of it. And so it's an amazing organization, and they've funded some incredible projects. But yeah, this one is just a very small, rare subset of that. So we decided to kind of become specific advocates for the Bardet-Biedl syndrome cause of RP, so that we can really be a singular voice for that condition and help raise awareness for that specific condition as a part of the greater community advocating for vision loss research.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to make that clear, because I know some people listening might be like, well, isn't Foundation Fighting Blindness or these other organizations on that? Like, why would a Race Against Blindness need to be created? But it's the hyper specificity of what you're, trying to tackle head on is why you had to go your own path, which I find admirable. Again, it's a rare disease. The fact that Foundation Fighting Blindness exists and does what they do is something I'm super thankful for. And then there's other organizations like RP Hope. And then there's, organizations like yours, and, they all have the same mission. Some have more resources than others. Like, for example, you're taking this on yourself. You started it yourself. Your goal was to raise $1 million. And I know you've raised over 6 figures thus far. How has that been, getting into the nonprofit world and trying to raise money? And yeah.
It's hard, right? I don't have nonprofit experience. I'm not I don't have any fundraising experience. I am just a dad who got a diagnosis like this. I am a physician, so I do have kind of the medical background and that medical knowledge to help me navigate some of these tough topics from, a terminology standpoint and understanding the underlying processes. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, I don't have any experience running a nonprofit. So that's, something I've had to learn on the fly. And we started this in January of this year. So we've been going for, 10 months. And when we started it, we didn't know about Dr. Beals and his research. We were simply kind of coming at it from, we want to do something. We want to help. We don't want to sit back and just let this happen without at least trying. And over the course of these 10 months, we've connected with him, and we've gone from a place of having kind of little hope that there was anything that could be done about it to having real hope and being at a point of that this clinical trial could happen. And really the big part, as you mentioned, is fundraising. So we kind of set out when we started all this, we want to raise $1 million this year as a nonprofit. And, it's been a kind of a slow curve where you kind of peter along and you start to get some momentum, and you start to figure out what you're doing. You start to connect with the right people, and you start to do fundraisers and all these kind of things. So you get to a point where you are raising money and you're making a difference. The clinical trial itself will cost much more than $1 million. But that was our goal as a nonprofit of what we wanted to be able to support to it. So it's been a big learning experience, a wild ride, lots of ups and downs, tons of emotions. Every day is a new roller coaster, but it's been very rewarding. And I wake up every day and this is what I do.
Yeah, it's nice to have, a mission and a purpose. I think it can just fuels you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your son, Luke, and how old is he currently? So
he just turned 10, just in the last couple of weeks. So he's a happy, amazing, incredible 10-year-old boy.
And you mentioned that, his kind of version of RP is expected for him to enter the legal blindness phase in his teenage years?
That's the typical progression. So he has Bardet-Biedl Syndrome 1, which is a subtype of a subtype. And, it's a variable progression for patients with Bardet-Biedl syndrome. He has his visual acuity right now is about 20/50, which in the state of Arizona would put him not legally allowed to drive right now. So he's already kind of progressed to that point. And then
and that's when corrected?
Yeah, that's with his glasses. He's at 20/50. Yeah.
Okay.
And then from like just a visual acuity and visual field standpoint, it seems he actually has a bit of a central vision field defect right now, which is a little bit different from typical RP where you get more of the tunnel vision and the loss of vision from the sides. He does have vision, retinal loss out at the periphery as well, but he has a bit of a more focal central defect right now. And then the night blindness is a big issue for him right now. That's really one of
Yeah.
the ones that we're feeling the most as a family and seeing the most right now for him is, those, once that light starts to go down, he has a really hard time feeling comfortable. That's when he starts to grab onto us for support. And that's very typical of, Bardet-Biedl syndrome, of course. So.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I admire what you're doing with all this. I'll be honest, like whenever I was doing research for this episode, it's been a while since I've like dedicated a lot of energy into like focusing on like the theme of a cure. And it was kind of nice to kind of jump back in and kind of think about it a little more because, I was diagnosed when I was 12 with
Okay.
RP. My mom has RP.
Okay.
So basically, her eye doctors wanted to keep an eye on, her children because it's genetically passed down. So I went on at 12 and they did some tests and discovered that I did have it. I wasn't experiencing any symptoms then. I didn't really start experiencing any RP symptoms until my like early 20s.
Okay.
And, I'm 33 and I'm still not classified legally blind. My mom is in her mid 60s and she has around 5 degrees of vision remaining.
Okay.
So, and on average, people with RP, are considered legally blind by, age 40. That's like kind of the average thing.
Yep.
And I know that's different than what Luke has with Bardet-Biedl syndrome. But yeah, when I was told at 12 that I had RP, it doesn't really sink in, because you're young, you're innocent, you're young, you haven't really felt the weight of the world yet. And as the father and as someone who has some wisdom and some years behind him, it's a different experience. I remember my mom cried when I was diagnosed because I think she felt guilty because she had passed it to me. My sister also has it as well, and my older brother, he was the one who didn't get it passed on to him.
Okay.
And then, my genetics will be, if I have children, 50-50 shot, pass it down. So, which we can get into later in this episode. But, when you're young, when you hear the word blindness, I mean, when it doesn't matter what age it is, when you hear the word blindness, it's very scary. And it's taken me till, I'm 33 and I've been kind of forcing myself to kind of look my future in the face, and through that work of like trying to accept my blindness, I've actually come a long way in terms of easing some anxiety and kind of feeling a little more comfortable in my own skin. But there's still an underlying, I feel like never ending, just line of tension there of uncertainty. And it's like, I've always said this, and I recently talked about it on a solo episode, but, I obviously support a cure. I would love a cure, want a cure. And I advocate for cures. Like I do work with Foundation Fighting Blindness and RP Hope. And, I'm glad that people are out there doing it because I can't do it myself. I don't have a research lab here in my apartment that in my spare time I can work on the cure, So it's kind of out of my hands. So I just put my good faith into organizations that are doing those things. But I've also, since I was diagnosed at 12 and my mom has had, RP, in the 80s and whatnot, and she's been hearing about cures for a while. I find that, wanting a cure and expecting a cure can be this kind of brutal loop of like, you have hope and then you have hopelessness, and it's just kind of continuous. And it's not that I've lost hope, like I still have hope, but I've also feel like I have to be careful with how much space, mental energy I put into, looking for the cure. And it's a kind of a weird tightrope balance of like having hope for a cure, but also finding time and energy to accept things. And I wanted to get your perspective, because, Luke's, he's 10. How are you preparing Luke for all cases, no matter what the outcome is. I'm curious to hear about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you said a lot of things there that I really resonate with and I feel deeply in so many ways. But to directly answer your question, we are planning for all scenarios. We are definitely preparing him for the reality that he could lose more. He will lose more vision.
Yeah.
There's no scenario where he's not going to lose more vision. Even if the cure got funded today and started to go to clinical trials, that's another whole year
Yeah.
away from starting. So he is actively losing his vision every single day. So we know that that's going to happen, and regardless of any potential therapy that could come or not come, we are preparing him for that eventuality. So, for example, like at this stage in his life, we finally started engaging the school system and some vision support resources to help him get accustomed to navigating, handling different situations. And just starting those vision support resources. But I think as parents, we really are more focused on the mental side of it.
Yeah.
Everything in life is how you react to it. I wish he wasn't losing his vision, but he is. And it's all going to be how he sees it and how he interprets that and reacts to it. So if he doesn't see it as a disability, it won't be. If he has the mental toughness and strength to get through tough situations, he will be able to overcome the inevitable challenges that he is faced with as he kind of navigates that changing environment of him for losing vision and going through that. And it's on us as parents to, be an example for him and try to teach him how to do those things. So I've tried to do things myself that are hard and challenging, and it's like I can't mimic that, and I don't know how to put myself in that situation, but other than just try to teach him how to react to tough situations, and every time that there's a challenge, I try to make it a teaching opportunity for him. And you had a hard time at school with this test, like, okay, let's react to it. How are we gonna view it? Are you going to view a challenge as something to be avoided, or are we going to take it and we're going to build on it and make it a positive and learn from it and grow? So those are all those opportunities that I have as a parent to try to model those situations for him and prepare him. And there's no playbook on this stuff, right? There's no. I try to connect with the community and ask for advice and get insight, but at the end of the day, there's not like a parenting playbook on how to raise a child going through this. So it's every day you're questioning yourself on, am I doing the right thing? Is there something else I should be doing? Should I be doing more? Is this going to help him? And so those are those daily doubts and fears and challenges that you go through as a parent in a situation like this. So one of the things that I've asked people in the community, I even got a chance to ask Molly Burke, for advice, like what's something that helped you as a kid or something you wished would have happened for you as a kid. So I ask advice. So I guess I would love to get your input on, what would you suggest? What have you found that's helpful for you, or what would you do differently if you could do it again?
Yeah. I think that's a loaded question, and it's a great question. Because it's difficult for me because my situation is quite different than Luke's in the sense of literal the symptoms and timeline, but also, how it's approached by your family. You have an organization dedicated to it, you're advocating online, and you're not sweeping, RP under the rug, which is what my family did, to be honest with you. It was like my mom had it, was legally blind, couldn't drive, but, it was never talked about. It was very like, almost like the elephant in the room that just wasn't addressed. And I knew I had it. My sister knew she had it, but me and her never talked about it. I mean, we still hardly do. And I didn't really start talking about it openly until I was 27 years old. And I just tried to pretend it didn't exist. And I think that has a lot to do with how I was raised with it, which is fine because, from your approach, you're trying to set, Luke up for success, and you're doing certain things and you're kind of addressing it in a way that's like, I'm not going to make RP the central focus of your childhood, and I'm not going to raise you any differently than I would, without it. I'm not going to love you any differently, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the fact that you're being so open with it is such a good thing for him. I know it's probably stressful for him sometimes. I'm sure he doesn't want to hear about it some days, the same way I didn't as a kid. It kind of was nice that it got ignored for me as a kid because it kind of made me feel like I didn't have it, and I could kind of pretend. But in the end, that kind of, comes back to sting you, the longer you postpone acknowledging it. And I think as long as you're finding that proper balance of addressing it, talking about it, supporting him about it, but also not making it his identity too, And I know it's a tightrope you're walking on. And how do you kind of strike that balance? But yeah, I think as long as, Luke feels comfortable that when he has a bad vision day or something happens in relation to his vision, he feels open, like he can talk to you about it. And he has you as a resource to help him adapt to it. And he doesn't feel on his own and isolated with his vision loss. I think that's really the best thing you can do, and that would be all I'd have to say is because it's not that I wasn't supported on my end, but it just wasn't like I said, it just wasn't a conversational topic, and I think that's kind of what made it feel even more like a taboo kind of thing. It made me feel even more like a genetic kind of anomaly, kind of mutant kind of thing, where it's like, different, in a bad way. Whereas now that I'm in this, BVI community, it's like, I know I'm different. I'm admitting that I'm different, but it's not like necessarily a bad thing. And it's all about how you react to it. And it's like, but I wasn't taught any of that. I had to learn it all on my own. And I think what I'm just trying to say is it's nice that you're there as a resource and as kind of guide rails to kind of keep Luke, from not going too far off the deep end one end where he's, going, into a depressive spiral about losing his vision, but he's also not going so far the other way where his whole identity is, RP. So I think as long as you're there to kind of keep them balanced, I think everything will be great. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, advice. And I'm inspired by your story and what you've done in terms of, you mentioned the communication part and how, it wasn't communicated, and now you've really taken that to the to the other level where, you communicate about this openly online and you help other people. I mean, I remember, when I was getting this diagnosis and searching for answers and community and connection, I came across you. You were one of the first people that popped up. You have one of the few podcasts on the topic. So seeing people who are out there talking about it, it makes it easier for you to talk about it. It makes it, like you said, a topic that is not to be feared. And it's something that it's a condition. It's not who you are. It's just something that you have, and everybody has something, right? I mean, whether it's depression, anxiety, cancer, vision loss, you name it, like everybody goes through these things. And so having a community to connect with that understands and that you can learn from is, I think, super important. I've learned so much from seeing what other people are talking about and how they're processing it. And then, you know, learning, just being open-minded. And from like the mindset part of it, like these are all things that I fast rewind maybe, 5 years ago, I really didn't have, I don't feel like the skill set that I have now that I've adapted.
Yeah.
I wasn't a person who had any type of, significant mental toughness, ability to handle, these things that life throws at you. And so these are all learned behaviors and traits that people acquire over time. And you described how you've kind of learned and adapted and gained these skills. And I'm learning them as I go as well. And that's really a part of like the life experience is gaining these skills. And I think that what I would tell anybody who's young or in a tough situation is like, most people don't have these skills inherently. They've just picked it up over time through the experiences they've had. Some people
Yeah.
have experiences earlier in life, some people have experiences later in life, but they're all learned skills, traits, abilities of how to handle the things that life throws at us. And so I think that feeling of kind of aloneness and fear when you're going through something hard for the first time is tough. But yeah, that's how life goes, is that you just have to learn these things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the big things I wanted to bring up is I had to force myself to do that work. And it was painful at first, but the more I kind of immersed myself, the more familiar I became, and the more comfortable I became with my own condition. And I think another piece of advice I would give you is to talk to people, and you are doing this, but talk to people who are already there at the it sounds kind of harsh, but at the worst case scenario phase of vision loss, and see how they're doing. And that's been a huge help for me is I'll talk to people who have been born blind or have become blind, and I see how they're just crushing it. Not everyone's crushing it. That's a reality. Obviously I have a podcast and I'm trying to promote and inspire people, and those are the stories that I'm trying to highlight, spotlight. But, I think blindness has a bad reputation, and unfortunately you have to seek out those champions, but they're out there, and there's a ton of them, and I think, you just have to find, your true north and some good role models in the sense of like, and then that can kind of help you feel like, okay, it's not going to be the end of everything, and, yeah, because you're not alone, it's a rare thing, but it's not just you. It can feel like it, In my small town in North Carolina growing up, it felt like I was the only one, and I was probably the only one in my school. So it's, but, with social media and this community just getting bigger and bigger, I mean, even when I started this podcast to now, I've seen it grow. People are being more outspoken about it and coming out, and there's like a thirst for community and meeting people and connecting and networking. And I think meeting and talking to as many people as possible will just help you feel more comfortable too, because it kind of it makes it less foreign. It's like learning a new language, basically.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think you brought up the point of the social media, and there's obviously lots of negative things that can come from social media, but like taking a diagnosis, it's all how you interact with things, and it's all how you perceive things. And there are so many positive things that can come from social media in the sense of community and finding resources and learning from people. If you seek out the right people, there's so many great opportunities out there to learn and connect and get resources. And it makes hard situations less scary when you have that, and there's so much out there. And so I'm so glad that there are people like you sharing and being out there and being a positive voice. I think that is just incredibly important. And you just kind of got to filter out the negativity that comes along in the social media world and get away from that as best you can. But yeah, it's such a great community.
Oh yeah, it's such a great community. Yeah, and there's plenty of negativity though.
Yeah, there is, unfortunately. I'm sure you've seen it and I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it's hard when that stuff comes at you, right? Like, how do you react to it? Do you give it any mental space? Do you try to block it out? Do you respond to it? Like, what do you do with those things? That's the negative part of social media.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I was going to ask you, because I know some people in the blindness community, they take on the approach of they don't want to be cured. And I don't necessarily buy into that. But I know that that's a thing. And I know people can take issue with kind of treating blindness as something to be cured, kind of the medical versus social model of everything. Have you faced any backlash, and how have you navigated that?
I wouldn't say backlash. I don't think that's
Yeah.
the right word for it. But I know what you're saying, and I've heard that talked about, and I don't think that our mindset on it is that it is something that should be cured. I don't see it as like some inherent thing that's wrong with you that like makes you less of a person or any of the above. Like we don't see it that way, and we're not approaching it that way, and that's not our underlying model for why we're supporting a cure or trying to support a cure. It's like any medical condition. If you can treat it and you can get a different quality of life back from it, then that is something I would want to try to have happen, like, and try to support. But it doesn't make, it doesn't change your identity. Again, my mindset is this is just something you have. It's not who you are. So it's not, so saying that you want to, preserve vision or save vision doesn't change the underlying person you are, doesn't change that. And even if you've built even if you've had it for a long time, and even if you've built your life around it, and that's what defines you, it doesn't have to. And you will continue to have that same, you'll continue to be the same person. You will be better for having gone through those things and had those skills if you restore vision. I just don't see it as something negative that somebody should feel like shouldn't be cured. And if they don't want to have the treatment or they don't want to go through that, that's everybody's personal choice. With every medical decision that gets made is, patient autonomy. That is number one. Is like, if you don't think it's the right fit for you, that is absolutely what should happen. And risks and benefits, and weighing all those things, and at the end of the day, deciding what is best for you as a person. So I'm not pushing anything on anybody that I wouldn't want them to go through. And so we have the ability to potentially save his vision and kids like him. And I want that to be a choice for people. And if they don't want that choice, or it's not the right fit, then I think that's the best part about our world and society, is that you have that choice.
Oh, definitely. I mentioned earlier about, my children, if I have children, which me and my wife want to have at least one.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in the process of planning that, 50-50 shot with my kids. So in terms of a cure, it's like, as much as I'm adapting to everything, and the more I'm kind of accepting it in my own head, I still understand the practicality and obvious usefulness of it. Especially when you think about like future generations, and, I think you're 100% right. Like restoring vision, is something that would be useful. Like, I can't drive a car. It would be useful to drive a car. That those are very, as much as, we can kind of dance around and tiptoe around, the topic, but it's like, people, it may be hard for them to admit that, but yeah, life would be easier if you could drive a car, So, I mean, there are practical things that would be solved, So yeah, I definitely understand and support that. I've even said to my wife, if I could just stop where I'm at now, I would be running through the streets celebrating. you
Absolutely.
know, so it's like it goes even beyond just reversing it. It's just, preventing further, degeneration. And yeah, I think if you're someone who's on the fence about, the medical social model, and you don't really understand, if your blindness is something that you should view as being to be cured, just think about future generations, and how, you want to give everyone the best resources, and I always say, like, if you had the opportunity before a child was born and there was a box you had to check and you had to check one said 20/20 vision and one said blind, like you're gonna check the 20/20 vision box. I mean, it's gonna sound rude to some people, but that is just the facts of it, and
Yeah.
I think you can't deny the reality. You got to be grounded. You can't get lost in a delusional world of, sight loss is not a thing, because that's why advocacy needs to happen, because it is something hard to go through. That's why you need community. That's why this has to be a thing, because it is a challenge and an obstacle you got to navigate around. If it was easy, there would be no point to this podcast,
Yeah. No, I mean, you're totally right. And I think it really just comes down to understanding at a very high level that by wanting a cure is not saying anything negative about anybody who has
Yeah.
vision loss. You're not saying that your personality or who you are is going to be changed, or that there's something wrong with you. I think that that's the most important message: is there's nothing wrong with you. It is just a medical condition that you have, and it's one of millions of medical conditions. And I think as a society, as an advancing society, who wants to, generally speaking, do better in the world, is like, we can treat conditions and we can make people's quality of life better, whether it was, antibiotics, hundreds of years ago to treat simple infections and keep people living longer, all the way up to more advanced stuff with cancer treatments, gene therapies, all this stuff that we're now able to do. Like, if there's a safe and effective way that we can take some of these medical conditions, nothing that's wrong with you, just a medical condition, and alleviate that, the problems that come with it, then that is something that I think our society, as a general rule, like, values and wants to do. We want to compassionately improve people's lives as best we can. And it's not to be viewed as something that's wrong with you. It's just something you have, and that's it. And that's how I view it.
Yeah, I agree. I think looking at it from just like, I used to kind of be fascinated by like medical definitions, because it sounded so clinical and kind of sterile. It kind of made it wasn't flowery language. It was just like, a degenerative eye condition where retinal cells, die. And I'm just like, oh, so that's just what it is, and it is what it is. It's just a thing, it's a thing that, I was born with, I have no control over. And that's the reality of it. And, but yeah, I think I want to move on to a little bit of a different topic. I want to bring up, how you're spending time with Luke currently. I know I see on Instagram that you've signed him up for like jujitsu. I know you've taken him around the country to see national parks. And I just wanted to bring up, Luke at his current age and how he's doing. How does he like being a part of this organization? How has he responded to all of this, and how is his childhood going?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Luke's the coolest kid. I love him so much. He's just such a fun kid. Everybody at school, the teachers, everybody's always talking about how kind he is, how good of a person he is. And I'm just so proud of him for that. And again, that goes back to just like who you are. Like, he has something, but that's not who he is. While I do this a lot in terms of the nonprofit, all the work we're doing, I talk about this openly on, social media, and I try to be, raising awareness for this. In terms of the day to day, it doesn't come up with him every day. It's not something that I bring up around him every day. This happens in the background. background. This is not how his childhood is taking place. He's not here right now watching me do this.
Yeah.
He's being a normal kid, and he's living life and doing all these things. Occasionally, yeah, this stuff comes up. When we're working on, vision resources, or, of course it comes up. It's part of his life, but it is not an everyday thing for him that we talk about or we go through. But getting this diagnosis and knowing, the future for him in terms of that he will fairly rapidly lose his vision, I wanted to give him as many as experiences as he could. So that's where we kind of really tried to take the situation and turn it to a positive, and appreciate life and live life and do all the things that we kind of always said that, you wanted to do but weren't doing, and make the most of things. And so I wanted him to see as much as he could while he has the vision now. So that's part of his life experiences and part of his, memory bank, that he's experienced all this vast array of different things as much as I can. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do that for him and show him those things and travel. And in terms of experiences, one of the kind of daily routine experiences that we have here for him is, he's in mixed martial arts at a local, studio here, and it is the best thing for him. My gosh, it's community, it's friends, it's teaching discipline and hard work. There's nothing free or given to you in a place like that. It's all earned. And it's all positive voices, positive reinforcement, positive encouragement. And there's people in there who all have different challenges, and whether it's a learning disability, a physical disability, visual challenges, whatever it is. Everybody just goes in there, they do the work, and and then you see benefits from it after putting in daily and repeated work. 6 months later, you get a new belt, you've learned a new skill, you've gained confidence that you can put in the work and do these things. And it's just such a great environment. I think there's so much to be learned from martial arts for everybody. Anybody could benefit from it. I think that's what I've kind of taken away from it. And from a physical standpoint, he's learning balance and control and feeling confident with his body and how he interacts with space and what he can physically do. Self-defense. He feels confident that he's, able to, get out of certain situations. It's, scary world out there. Bad things happen, right? So he can learn how to, defend himself. Those are important things for him that from a confidence standpoint. And that's really important for all of us to have that confidence in ourselves, and confidence breeds confidence and success. So if he's in a tough situation with his vision, maybe having a hard time at night getting down the stairs, and he's like, okay, this is a tough situation, but at karate, I was, in a little match with somebody, and I was getting pinned. And then I took a breath. I took a step back, I thought, and then I did this maneuver and I got out of it and it worked and I had success. And he's like, okay, I did that. I can do this. So, those situations all translate, from, the different avenues in life. So it's just such a great tool for him. And, he loves it. He has fun with it. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. He's a kid. He has fun with it. He's having his birthday party there this week. So we're celebrating with his friends. He's going to go and have a birthday party at the karate place. So it's, it's just how much he loves it. And I wouldn't change that for the world. It's an awesome experience.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And with his mixed martial arts skills, if he's having trouble on the stairs, he'll probably just end up cartwheeling down them,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's such a good skill set, it's so applicable to so many things, and balance and body control and, learning all this cool stuff. It's a really useful skill set for, him in so many ways, mentally and physically.
Yeah, that's great. And I love to hear that. And, that's something he'll be able to do, and he'll be able to age into that, regardless of cure or no cure, so that's what, I love hearing that. And I just want to, well, go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, there's a guy who I followed on social media. I think he goes by the Blind Grappler.
Okay.
He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's very competitive, very good. And he is blind.
I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, it's cool stuff, man. It's amazing what he's doing. And again, that's he's overcome that and he's doing something with it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like with Luke, he could grow into it and it could become something that he, continues with later in life, no matter what happens. But yeah, it's really inspiring seeing somebody like that doing that. It's very cool.
Yeah, and I know Anthony Ferraro, he does the judo, Paralympic judo.
Okay.
And I've interviewed someone, his name is Angel, and I've had him, it was an early episode before I did video, but he's blind and he does jujitsu. So yeah, I'm fascinated by it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like to be such a well-rounded sport, physically and mentally. I think
It
that's
is.
what draws people to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to commend you. I wanted to officially just say, like, thank you for the work you're doing. And I think it's something you don't have to do. I've seen you in a video. You mentioned you turn your pain into motivation. And I think that's something that a lot of people can learn. We all have life. Again, doesn't matter, disability, no disability, life will get you. So turning pain into motivation is a skill we could all use. And, I think, you've decided to approach this and give it an effort. And I just want to say I commend you on that. And, I wish you the best on this journey, and I want you to raise as much money as you possibly can, because again, it's going to help more people in the future. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I have so much to say about, the process of getting to this point of being able to do this. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And it wasn't, and I mentioned that, I've gone through divorce. I've gone through a number of things that put me in the position to be here, to be able to do this for him and be ready for this. And so it was definitely a series of events that put me here. And in terms of, the research in the future, the raising the money is important. The raising awareness is very important. But I do see that this is there's so much. I don't want people to not have hope who
Yeah.
want to have a cure. Are you familiar with Luxturna? Have you heard about that at all? For Leber congenital amaurosis.
No.
Okay, so Luxturna was a treatment that was FDA approved in the last couple of years. It is a gene therapy, and it was essentially one of the first therapies that corrected a childhood cause of blindness. I think it falls under the RP spectrum, and that's what that's what this treatment that we're supporting for Luke is based off of, and for the Bardet-Biedl is based off that same therapy. So it's a model that's starting to show hope and show that it can be done. And looking long term, not just at this clinical trial, one of my goals with this nonprofit is advocacy with the FDA and stuff like that, to help them understand rare disease research and help them come up with models to make rare disease research a reality, so that there aren't people who feel left out and without hope. If there are people who want treatment and cures, that this can be done, and that our system won't hold them back, which is unfortunately kind of the model we have now with pharmaceuticals, and the way that these trials and rare disease research gets funded, is that it just the model doesn't support it. So I think one of the big important parts of the nonprofit is that advocacy part, and advocating for people who want help, and that they're a small part of the society that are getting left out of that that research model. So
Definitely. Yeah. And I think people need to remind themselves so they can help themselves and simultaneously help others.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other, and I think this is a good example of that, because, it all goes into the same bucket. We're all part of the same team here, whether you're newly diagnosed with a retinal disease or if you were born blind. In my opinion, we're all on the same team, and we all want the same thing. We just want the best for everyone, despite their field of vision or acuity. And Yeah. So I always try to create like a supportive space here for anyone on wherever you are on that spectrum, of blindness.
Yeah, I think that, I think the same team part is, it can be even expanded further. We're all on the same team as humans.
Yeah.
We're all people who, care about each other and need support. And regardless of what you might see, elsewhere in the world, I think that most people are really good people who want to help each other and want to make other people's lives better. And I think there are so many good people out there who see the world that way. And that's certainly what I've taken from putting myself out there. It's scary to put yourself out there, right? And you're like, well, what's going to happen? How's it going to be
Yeah.
received? And my takeaway is that's humankind, is that most people are good and they want to do good things. And so whether you're suffering, from, if you have any vision, if you're on a vision spectrum of, blindness or vision loss, to anything in the human condition, we're all on the same team. And I think we should all view each other that way and try to remember that when we're interacting with other people, is that, like, you don't know what someone else is going through, but we're all going through something. We're all helping, we all want to make each other better. And if we can provide support to each other in that process, we're all going to be better off for it.
Oh, 1,000%. I agree completely. And I also just want to say, I know I've kind of said it earlier, but I think I just want to say that it's such a good thing of how supportive you are. I think a parent's support, especially a father's support from a son's perspective, can't be replaced. It's nothing that can be recreated. As much as people can find a community online and try to do things on their own. Having, a father's support as a son is just so valuable. So I think as long as you're there with those guardrails and, making Luke feel comfortable and aging into his situation, no matter what the outcome is, keeping that hope there. And in the days when he doesn't feel that hope, to make him feel okay about it, I think it's just it's going to be a beautiful thing for him. And he's going to realize that, the older he gets. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Had to squeeze that in there.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, those are all the things I hope for, right? As a parent, you want to do the best for your kid, and you want to, try to help them grow into happy, healthy adults who one day can be on their own and, thriving in the world. But like I said, there's no playbook. Every day is filled with doubt and fear. And am I doing the right thing? Is there something else I could be doing? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the message, is like, regardless of who you are or what you're going through, like, doubt and fear and all those things is a part of the process. And, you just, it's all about how you react to it. And it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to have challenges. Those are things that can all be learned from and grown from. And you just have to learn how to process all those things that fits with who you are. And then as a parent, when you're trying to help a kid, is like learning about them and how they process things, and then trying to model what you're doing to help them the best, because what works for me isn't going to work for you, isn't going to work for my son, isn't going to work for anybody else in the world. Everybody reacts to things differently. So you do have to take a very individualized approach to what you do that you think will help support somebody else in their situation. And that's really how I try to approach it, is just that individualized, what's the best thing for him.
1,000%. I think that's perfectly said. Before we wrap up here, I wanted to give an opportunity for you to give people listening, a location to kind of know where if they wanted to donate to help, a race against blindness. I'm going to have just links in the show description, so everyone can just click there and, link to the website. And I know you have Instagram account. But yeah, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of direct people to where they need to go.
Yeah. So this is one of the hardest things I had to learn as a nonprofit founder, is that I'm inherently, I don't ask for help very well. Like, I've always just kind of like done things on my own, and like, stubborn man, right? Like, I can do this on my own. And when I decided that this is something I wanted to undertake, is, I can't do this on my own. Everybody needs help. Everybody needs support. and with a problem, as big as what we're trying to do with all the, the pieces that need to fall into places, I need help. And so learning how to ask for help was really hard for me in the beginning of all this. And so it's still not my nature to ask people for help, right? But to that end, our website is a raceagainstblindness.org. We have ways to donate on there. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so there's tax deductible. You can do tax deductible donations. People who can't donate, I don't expect anybody to ever give anything, but there's people who've always asked for how can we help if we can't donate? And there's people who've run amazing fundraisers on their own, whether it's doing a bake sale. We had a teacher we'd never met before. She wanted to do a bake sale for Luke, which was incredible. So she did what skill set she had and ran a bake sale. We had Luke's friends at school run a lemonade stand for him, and they raised $10,000.
Wow.
Incredible. It's so moving. We have a video of the news coverage for it. It was just truly moving and inspiring. So there's just so many ways that, if you feel like you want to help and you're inspired in any way, there's so many ways you can help. And it's not just donations. It's really, community, whether it's just sharing all this with your friends. The social media stuff is definitely how we get a lot of our word out. So I have my account, the dad.first.blindness, and our nonprofit has an account, a.race.againstblindness. So we post on there and try to share about ourselves and our family and what we're doing and the research that we're supporting. And so those are great ways to connect, just if nothing else from a community standpoint. We're there, we'd love to connect with people, and we can learn from you. And if we can provide any value to you in return, we're here for that. And so those are the best ways to kind of find out more about us and get involved. But I just appreciate anybody who just reaches out and connects. It's very nice to just see the people who want to be a part of something like this.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, go check out A Race Against Blindness. Follow Steven on Instagram. Again, I'll have links for all that in the show description. And like he said, if you can't donate, it's fine. Just there's other ways to show support. And let's leave it there. I think we had a great discussion, Steven, and I'm thankful for your time, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I think we could have gone for a couple hours probably with all the stuff that I could cover and ask and learn about. It's just scratched the surface on all the learning that I could get from you, but I definitely appreciate everything you shared and opened up with, and of course for having me, and more than that, for what you're doing for the community and showing your strength and helping others. So thank you for being all that, and it's been a true pleasure to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. That means a lot to me.
Yes.
So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
But enjoy the rest of your day, man, and I'll keep in touch with you.
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.